Okay, I found my little notes here, so I'm just going to go back to a couple of quick things and then we're going to get into this next video. Okay, getting to the Bush's family tree that you can look up on YouTube. One of his relatives was Vlad the Impaler. Everybody has known him to be Dracula. He was, yes, he was a real person. And, you know, I just saw an interview that was really good on YouTube. This is a program called Now You See TV. And David Carrico was on there, and they talked about Vlad the Impaler because he had committed all these murders and how it is believed that he was traced back to a high-ranking Freemason. One of the things, just real quick, one of the things that we have found out behind Freemasonry is that when you get into the upper ranks of Freemasonry, one of the initiations is you have a 24-hour period to break all 10 commandments. Okay? I mean, that's the kind of stuff they do. So, you know, and it is believed that Vlad the Impaler either was under a special initiation or that there was more than one person. But it all involves blood drinking, blood sacrifice. Well, I'm telling you right now, that stuff's going on today. Okay? There's a lot of rituals going on today. And I'm not talking about that wannabe Satanist around the corner from you. I'm talking about way up in the ranks of society. Okay? Crazy stuff. Just off top of my head, I can think of one crazy thing to where Al Gore, he had left a briefcase in an elevator. And when they opened the briefcase to find out who it belonged to, it was full of vials of blood. Okay? So when they got it back to Al Gore and they had asked questions about it, he made a statement that he was a hemophiliac and this was what he needed when he needed a transfusion. The thing was, is that he was in the military. I believe he was Navy. Hemophiliac would have never been in the Navy, ever. So, it's believed that he's also hook line into the bloodlines. It's also believed that he's been such a part of the ceremonies, he has an addiction to blood. It gives a source of energy to these people because they've been at it for so long in their rituals that they're addicted. Okay, they really are addicted. It's like a drug to them. Okay, I think that's all. I was going to touch on this too. If you want to see an actual breakdown of the listings that this 12-year-old girl did in 2009 of all these presidents being related to each other, you can find it on Luna. I'm going to spell it. Luna, L-U-N-A-T-I-C-O-U-T Post, P-O-S-T.com. And this guy, he took the information and he blocked it all out. You know, he laid it all out. Who's related to who, how they're related, just lists. Okay? Also, another interesting person, if you want to get deeper into finding out about these bloodlines, you know, the same bloodlines we're reading about in the Bible, only in modern times, that are still connected back to the Kenites or the line of Cain. Fritz Springmeier. Now, he's got a book called Bloodlines of the Illuminati. Let me give you a quick little history on Fritz Springmeier. He did a lot of work on mind control. There are people, we'll get into that at a later time, but you are surrounded in mind control. People in Hollywood, people, look at all these Disney people that are having meltdowns, you know, that went totally off the chain. Okay, from children, and then like Miley Cyrus, Britney Spears, and how crazy nuts they got. And, you know, all these people in Hollywood. Okay, there is mind control. That's modern day slavery. Modern day slavery isn't, you know, having a couple of slaves working your plantation. That is not what modern day slavery is. Modern day slavery is the people you see in the music industry that are giving you those pyramid symbols. It's Jay-Z, it's Beyonce, you know, all these people that are suddenly flashing all these illuministic signs in your face. They have to do it, okay? Not all of them are bloodlined in. A lot of these people are under mind control, okay? They were sold into slavery as children to be a progeny in this world in exchange for wealth, power, prestige, different things. Some of them went willingly, some of them were under mind control, and most of them, their folks were military. Okay, that's a whole nother story. However, Fritz Springmeier wrote a book, How to Detect a Mind-Controlled Slave, because he has worked with people in getting them deprogrammed. There was one person in particular, she was named Cisco Wheeler, and he wrote a book on this and getting these people deprogrammed. And I know this is probably too much information for you right now. I know very few of you probably know what I'm talking about. Others, you're probably lost. Okay, I'll just recommend Fritz Springmeier. Anyway, you can find him on YouTube. Just type in his name. He also has a website called pentracks.com. Pentra, I think CKS.com. This man had put out a lot of information on being mind controlled and then how they're controlling the public. Okay, because we're all being controlled. We've been dumbed down. We don't even know our true history. Okay, even in the world of religion, I don't care what church you think you're going to and how right on you are. There is things that you are not being taught right in your church. It's infiltrated everything. And so this man, he did this whole thing on mind control slaves and how even there are people out there that are under mind control that don't know that they are, you know, and I mean, they have days missing in their life that are not accounted for, but they're being used as couriers between, you know, United Nations, America, the other countries. They're being used as sex slaves, sex trafficking, and there's just a whole world of debauchery going on out there that most people, it'll never make the light of day, and you will not realize. You think you're living in a wonderful world, and you are not. So anyway, he did a lot of different things on mind control, and then next thing you know, he's going to prison for 10 years. And what they did is, though I don't know, shadow government to shut him up, made it look like he was involved in a burglary, which he was not, but he did 10 years in prison. And in fact, he just got out, I'm guessing maybe about 2010, 2009. So after serving 10 years for burglary, okay? He was not a burglar. He was doing these seminars for churches. He was doing them for Prophecy Club. He was writing books, and this put him out of commission for 10 years. So, he has received some abuse behind it, but he's back at it, and he's got several books. But if you want to know about the bloodlines of the Illuminati, that's the name of one of his books. Now, they're not cheap. They're probably $40, $50. And I think because there's no more printing of them, I'm not sure. Some of his books I don't think you can get anymore unless you buy them secondhand through somebody else. And then, of course, there's people out there that want to capitalize on everything, so they add their price to it. But if you don't have the money for his books and you're still interested, I would go online, type in on YouTube, Fritz, F-R-I-T-Z, Springmeier, S-P-R-I-N-G-M-E-I-E-R, And look for some of his interviews. I mean, this man is not like he's trying to hold anything back. He's just very easy to understand, very knowledgeable on a lot of things. And then, of course, his website is pentrax.com. Okay, so now that I got that out of the way, now that we've talked about the genealogy of Jesus through Joseph and Mary, the next thing I would like to talk about is, what are these extra books of the Bible all about? What good are they? So, I'm going to pull out my binder, and I'm going to read information. Unfortunately, I think that the information that I got, I don't know why I don't have the, I don't know who to give credit to. I can only imagine that I might have gotten this from the Nag Hammadi library, because that is typically where I am when I print these books. But I don't see anybody to give credit to. Okay, so first of all, what are these words? We have pseudepigrapha. Okay? We have apocalypse. Okay, or apocalyptic literature. We have testaments. We have legends. We have, what are they? We have psalms, prayers, and odes. Wisdom and philosophical literature. Okay? What I'm going to explain to you is just going to be real quick. I have better explanations of this stuff. I've been reading that book I talked about, Flying Serpents and Dragons. And, you know what? Actually, I think this is where I'm going to go with this. Okay? I think that's where I'm going to go with this. Alright. There are extra books of the Bible. There were canonical books that are no longer part of the Bible. They're called deuterocanonical books. There's parts like the book of Ezra where there's more books to Ezra than what we have in our Bible that you have access to now because of the Dead Sea Scrolls. The book of Esther has an addition to it. Let's see. There's like a whole ton of deuterocanonical books. I don't have, okay. Yes, I do. Then there's Tobit. There's Judith. There's the Wisdom of Solomon. Okay, there's the Wisdom of Jesus, son of Sirach. So it must be, I don't know, Jesus. There's Baruch. There's a letter of Jeremiah. Prayer of Azariah. Susanna. Bel and the Dragon. Prayer of Manasseh. And 1st and 2nd Maccabees. Okay, these are all considered deuterocanonical books. Okay, then you have what's called pseudepigrapha. Most of it is Jewish, but I'm going to read here. I'm just going to read here out of this book, Flying Serpents and Dragons, The Story of Mankind's Reptilian Past by R.A. Boulay. And I'm not saying I believe everything in this book. I have to chew the grass. I have to spit out the hay. I believe there's probably about 20% truth in this book. But this here that I'm about to tell you, anyway, it goes back to this book. It says in this chapter, it's labeled The Lost Books of the Old Testament. It says there are many documents which are mentioned in the Old Testament that have either been lost or suppressed. Okay, for example, in the section of Joshua 10:13, which relates to the event in which the sun stood still in the sky, it is said, is this not recorded in the book of Jasher? This book is also mentioned in 2 Samuel 1:17, when David is lamenting the death of Saul by the Amalekites. The book of Jasher is apparently an epic account of the Israelites' desert wanderings, the invasion of Canaan, and the battles fought by Saul and David. This lost book is probably related to the Book of Wars of Yahweh, which is mentioned in Numbers 21:14. Now you can go back and look these up. When the Israelites were leaving the Sinai and were encountering resistance by the Moabites in their attempt to enter the land of Canaan. The Moabites were the mighty men of Moab. Another lost book was apparently compiled in 7 parts at Joshua's request. It is mentioned in Joshua 18:9 and describes the division of the land of Canaan and its distribution among the tribes of Israel. Its title is unknown. There are many more passing references to lost books in the Old Testament. The book of the story of Adam is mentioned in Genesis 5:1. And seems to be a detailed account of the first 10 generations from Adam to Noah. There is a reference to the book of Yahweh in Isaiah 34:16, which appears to deal with agriculture and animal husbandry. Other books mentioned in passing are the books of the Acts of Solomon, referred to in 1 Kings 11:41. Which deals with the deeds of Solomon for the 40 years that he was king. The Chronicle of the Kings of Judah as found in 1 Kings 14, 15, and 22. And the Chronicle of the Kings of Israel mentioned in 1 Kings 14, 15, and 16 are a detailed history of the early kings after the division of the Empire of Solomon. Other books referred to in passing are the book of genealogy and the chronicles of the sons of Levi. Even in the Dead Sea Scrolls, there's an excerpt taken from the book of Lamech, the antediluvian patriarch. Again, the word antediluvian means before Noah's flood. Typically before Noah's flood, anytime before that. Okay, the history of Hebrews as recorded in the Old Testament has many missing sections. For example, only 2 years of the 40 spent wandering in the desert of Sinai is covered. The other 38 years are only a blank. There is only sketchy information on the late years of Solomon, suggesting that the biographical account has been suppressed, presumably for his worshiping plural gods. His harem of hundreds of wives or concubines probably did not sit well with the chroniclers. Who are the chroniclers? The people that put the Bible together. Okay? They didn't want all that in there. That probably wouldn't have been good for the Bible anyway to be reading it, but it's probably very good historical account. See, because when they talk about King Solomon and how he was into, oh my gosh, all kinds of the Babylonian mystery religion. He's like the granddaddy of it. And, but you don't see that in the Bible. You have to get this from other sources, other than he did write the Songs of Solomon and, or the Song of Songs in your Bible. And that's a pretty metaphoric book, not one you really want to read to your kids. Okay? Now, the books of the pseudepigrapha. What we were just talking about here are the lost books of the Old Testament. Okay? Plus, there's deuterocanonical books that were a part of the Old Testament that were taken out of the Old Testament. So we got 2 right there. Now, the books of pseudepigrapha. Okay, pseudo. Pseudo never sounds good. It almost sounds like pseudoscience. Okay? You think of it as, but read this, okay? And this is really what the point that I'm trying to make. Okay, there's an abundance of post-biblical documents in the 1,000 years after the Bible was first canonized. The Jews of Europe, Asia, and Africa wrote prolifically in an attempt to clarify the Mosaic Law. These provide a large literature of historical and anecdotal comments on biblical passages. A large number of these documents by Jews were completely lost from the transmitted heritage and reappeared between 200 BC and 200 AD. Too late to be included in the formalized Hebrew accounts. These documents have been grouped together under the general term pseudepigrapha, a term which has evolved from the Greek denoting writings with false superscription. The term is used by contemporary scholars not because it denotes something spurious about the documents, but because the name has been inherited and is now used internationally. Okay, this literature includes the Book of Jubilees, which we're going to get to in a minute because I'm going to show you an example here out of my Book of Jubilees. And the 3 books of Enoch. Okay, they're not 3 different books, okay? What they are, he's saying one's Hebrew, one's in Ethiopic, and one's in Slavonic, okay, language. I believe the one I have is Slavonic, and let's see. Yeah, and I believe that is the only manuscript left. They don't have all 3. So when you get the Book of Enoch, you're not getting, there's not like 3, you gotta try to get all 3 out there. There was only one manuscript left, and that was the Slavonic manuscript. So when you get it, your Book of Enoch is the same as somebody else's Book of Enoch. Now, I don't know if there's more than one translator. I don't know if R.H. Charles did a translation of it. The one that I have, I don't think I even have the translator's name on it, which is odd because it really, oh, it is. Okay, it is. It's R.H. Charles, okay? He did a lot of these. In fact, he did the Book of Jubilees that I have, that copy. Now, there may have been other translators. Okay, now, I gotta get back to what I'm reading here, huh? Okay. This literature includes the Book of Jubilees and the 3 books of Enoch, one in Hebrew, one in Ethiopic, one in Slavic. It also includes the books of Ezra, the books of Baruch, much apocryphal literature of the ancient patriarchs, the lost Judeo-Hellenistic works, and many expansions on the works of the Old Testament. Like I said, go to the Nag Hammadi library online, and you can download all of these. I got mine hard copy, printed form. I'm still printing them out. I mean, my gosh, I got binders and binders of this stuff. Okay. In addition to the pseudepigrapha, there are collections of ancient Jewish and early Christian writings which are recognized as important to understanding the period in which the pseudepigrapha were composed. These sources include the works of the Jewish philosopher Philo of Alexandria. Philo. You can still get it. You can get it online. You can go to eBay, Amazon. Philo, the philosopher, had, such esoteric, very deep meaning on things, okay? Circa 20 BC to 50 AD, okay? All right. Philo's writings were before Jesus Christ was born, okay? There's a lot to learn in these. All it is, Philo goes through, like Genesis, for one, goes through and just breaks down everything. I mean, I have a binder here that years ago I was going through and writing what every word meant. Remember, I was talking to you about layers in your Bible. And I was telling you that there's the layer that people just read, the top layer, then there's a spiritual, and then there's a deeper one. Well, Philo goes deep. He was an esoteric philosopher. So he wrote deep on these things, you know, like the rivers going through the book of Genesis, the four that come to a head to the Garden of Eden, the Pishon, the Euphrates. There were four of them. I can't think off the top of my head. But he wrote what the meanings of those were and what the esoteric meaning of it was, besides it just being four riverheads connecting. You know, he was talking about that, you know, what means fortitude, and I don't know, just getting into the deep meaning of, you know, what each one of these relate to in a person's life, okay, spiritually. So, I mean, it's deep, okay? Philo's deep. All right, let me keep going here. Okay, so his writings were from 20 BC to 50 AD, okay? The works of the Jewish historian general Flavius Josephus of about AD 37 to 100. Okay. Actually, the Dead Sea Scrolls dated to 150 BC to 70 AD. Okay, here's the thing with Josephus. Okay, Josephus was not a Christian. He was a historian during that time. But what was cool is he was around before Jesus was born and lived until years after Jesus died on the cross. So he was a witness to a lot of things. And he has a lot of writings. I mean, he wrote, oh my gosh, so that's a good one to have. I think I've got it right. No, that's not it. Anyway, I've got that one too, somewhere in my book of books. Anyway, Flavius Josephus. Josephus, that's another good book to get, because historically he was a witness to these things, you know, in the time of Jesus and all that. So even if he was not a follower of, he still has some historical importance to bring to the table about that period of time. Okay, so that's another book that you can get. I have mine in here somewhere. But yeah, that's Josephus. Okay, and the next example, they say, the Targums of Aramaic translations and interpretations of Hebrew scriptures. Okay, the Targums. Remember I told you all about the Targum? You can get that copy that Zen Garcia put forth of the Palestinian and Aramaic Targum. And you can find that. You can find that on eBay, Amazon, or Lulu.com. The Targums. See, they predate your King James. Okay, they predate all the Bibles. These are the scriptures. When Jesus is talking about scriptures, he's talking about the Targums. Okay? Jewish magical papyri. The writings of the Hermetics, 1st century AD documents attributed to Hermes and his followers. The Nag Hammadi papers, which are Coptic codices of the 1st to 4th century relating to the Gnostic tradition. Yeah, when you go to the Nag Hammadi library, there are a whole list of books that are codices. They are Gnostic, so you have to be careful. This is another case where you better chew the grass, spit out the hay. Okay, I wouldn't suggest reading those codices unless you are a seasoned Christian and not easily led another direction. There's a lot of truth in them. There's a lot of things to be gained, because this is esoteric knowledge. But the thing is that the beliefs of those Gnostics is not the beliefs of the Christian. Okay, they believe that Lucifer is good. Okay, all right, and there's a whole long reason for why they believe he was good, going back to the Garden of Eden. It's a real twisted kind of a thing. But what's interesting is they bring things to the table that are truth, that are good, because it gives you some better understanding of some things even in your Bible, the things that you're reading. But again, warning, Will Robinson. you want to be a seasoned Christian before you go digging around in the Gnostic codices. Okay? Next. What else? And the Apocrypha. Okay? This is, oh my gosh, I have a lot of Apocrypha. I printed a lot of Apocrypha. Anyway. This says, and the Apocrypha or documents preserved in Greek, but not in the Hebrew Old Testament. Okay? The Gnostics. Okay. The Gnostics. I'm going to just real quick go over the Gnostics, what he says here. I believe, I don't know where this man is coming from. He's of the, I would believe that this man probably believes along the lines of Zechariah Sitchin, but, you know, so I read it with a grain of salt. I would believe that he is somewhat Gnostic in his belief, but nonetheless, this is what he says under the Gnostics, the first suppressed heresy of the church. The Gnostic literature was also completely left out of the scriptures, being serious contenders to the early Christian church. Okay, this is why I tell you, be a seasoned Christian if you're going to go through the codices in the Nag Hammadi library. Okay, don't go reading them if you're like a new Christian or you're not really understanding what you believe and why you believe it. Okay? It's only, I read them for historical reasons. Okay. The Gnostic literature, okay, in the early years of the Christian era, the Gnostics were harassed and utterly defeated, and their literature was consigned to oblivion. Okay, when they talk about defeated and all that, now they're talking about the Catholic Church. Okay, this is a fight that went on between them. Okay, in the first 3 centuries of Christianity, the most systematic and organized Christian religion was that of the Gnostics, which spread from Palestine through Asia Minor to North Africa and then to European territories of the Roman Empire. It was spread by Roman legions wherever they went and was integrated with the local religions and customs. It was so popular that it posed a serious challenge to the early Roman Church. There we go. Okay, they don't like competition. Okay, in the 2nd century, then it starts talking about Valentinius, who was a Gnostic thinker. You'll find Valentinius's works also in the Nag Hammadi library. I take that with a grain of salt. Okay, and it says, Valentinius, a major Gnostic thinker, sought election as Pope in Rome and came very close to being elected. This event marked the high point of Gnosticism. Alarmed by the growth and strength of Gnosticism, a religion that held a priesthood as unnecessary. Well, with that, I agree. I don't believe there needs to be church hierarchies and a big church leader and then all these people under him and under him. I mean, today's world, our churches, they're set up to be kings in their own right. And it's like, no, I don't think that that's what Apostle Paul was doing. He was creating groups in homes. He was not building buildings, okay, and having parking lot money drives. Okay, the Bishop of Rome, with the connivance and support of the Emperor Constantine, convened a council of bishops in AD 325. And with their help declared Gnosticism a false doctrine and major heresy. Skipping down, then in 1945, extensive Gnostic treatises were found in earthenware jars in Egypt at a small town called Nag Hammadi, thus the name Nag Hammadi for the Nag Hammadi Library. This find was as significant to biblical research as that of the Dead Sea Scrolls in Palestine. Okay? Nag Hammadi Library has a little bit of everything. It's got the Dead Sea Scrolls. It has the Gnostic section, which is separate from everything else. It's got the Pseudepigrapha. It's got the Deuterocanon. It's got the Apocryphas. Okay, what's an Apocrypha? When we look in our own Bible, the very last book of our Bible, written by John, the book of Revelation, that's considered apocryphal, okay? That would be considered apocryphal. But there were apocryphal writings by various other church leaders. There was like even, the apocalypse of, I don't know. There's apocalypse of everybody. There's like the apocalypse of Adam. There's an apocalypse of Abraham. There's, the apocalypse of Peter. There's a lot of books like that. There's, yeah. And they are non-canonical, non-canon. Canon being your Bible. They are non-canon books. Old Testament pseudepigrapha. Okay? Oh, there's so much. Okay, so anyway, the last part I want to read is this, on the Gnostics. Just giving you a good idea. In the Gnostic tracts, the existence of the serpent gods is clearly indicated. The serpent in the Garden of Eden is a noble and virtuous creature. That's what the Gnostics believe. See? It is a woman called Lilith who is first created, and then later Adam is provided to her as a mate. See, it's twisted. Augustine belonged before his conversion, to which St. Augustine belonged before his conversion. He was a Gnostic and was persecuted so vigorously for their beliefs, undermined many of the precepts of the male-dominated early church. Furthermore, in the Gnostic philosophy, there's no need for an intermediary between man and God, okay, thus eliminating Jesus Christ, which is why I find it real interesting how when we go back into the genealogy and when I was telling you about the hierarchies, the ruling class of today, how they want to equate themselves to coming from the lineage of Jesus Christ. Well, first of all, if they can tell you that, then you just start thinking he was just a man. And then, he's no longer divine. You know what I'm saying? They have no honor for Jesus Christ. These royals and whoever over there in Britain, all the bloodlines under them, our presidents, okay? They don't have that. They do not have this, they don't have any respect for Jesus Christ at all. Okay, so they try to destroy any of that any way they can, which is no different than the early Gnostics or the Gnostics of today. Okay, so they say there's no need for an intermediary between man and God. Well, yeah, there is. Jesus Christ. That's the only one that can reconcile us back to the Father. So anyway, I just wanted to give you a little piece. I told you that when I found anything in this book, which is another book you got to be careful of, I would bring it to the table because there's a lot of good information out there. He did do a very good outline on what these books are and what they're about. And so when I talk about books like Book of Jubilees, I'm talking about these apocrypha books, these extra biblical books, some that were part of the Bible, some that were not. And I said, it's another person's history. If it was not an inspired word, and I mean, you can clearly read parts of these books and say, no, there's no way this is inspired. It's historical, okay? Now, what I wanted to read real quick before I run out of time here is I wanted to go to the Book of Jubilees, okay? Right here, Book of Jubilees. Okay. And we were talking about Abraham, okay, in our study, and we were talking about the in our last video. And we were talking about how, just Abraham's bloodlines up to Jesus Christ. So here we're looking at the Book of Jubilees, and this gives us a little missing chunk that we don't know about Abraham prior to when the Bible starts talking about Abraham, okay? And this is just an example of what you find in these writings. How some of it just sounds a little ridiculous, some of it sounds like, wow, it fits like a glove, and so you decide for yourself. I'm just going to read this little excerpt just to give you an idea. This is about Abraham, okay? Okay, I'm going to start with, okay, I'm going to go up here. And in the 39th Jubilee, this book is called Jubilees. Every 49 years is a Jubilee in the Bible, and I think it's like in a Jubilee year, all debts are forgiven. Okay. It says in the 39th Jubilee, in the second week in the first year, Terah took himself a wife, and her name was Edna, the daughter of Abram, the daughter of his father's sister. And in the 7th year of the week, she bare him a son and called his name Abram, by the name of the father of his mother. For he had died before his daughter had conceived a son. And the child began, now we're talking about Abraham, okay? And the child began to understand the errors of the earth, that all went astray after graven images and after uncleanness. And his father taught him writing, and he was 2 weeks of years old, and he separated himself from his father, that he might not worship idols with him. And he began to pray to the Creator of all things, that he might save him from the errors of the children of men. Because remember, it wasn't too long before this was the flood, okay? The flood of Noah. Anyway, he might save him from the errors of the children of men, and that his portion should not fall into error after uncleanness and vileness. And the seed time came for sowing of seed upon the land, and they all went forth together to protect their seed against the ravens. And Abram went forth with those that went, and the child was a lad of 14 years. Now he's 14 years old. And a cloud of ravens came to devour the seed, and Abraham ran to meet them before they settled on the ground. And he cried to them before they settled on the ground to devour the seed, and said, Descend not, return to the place whence ye came. And they proceeded to turn back. And he caused the clouds of ravens to turn back that day 70 times. And of all the ravens throughout all the land where Abram was, there not so much as one. And all who were with him throughout all the land saw him cry out, and all the ravens turned back, and his name became great in the land of the Chaldees. And there came to him this year all those that wished to sow, and he went with them until the time of sowing ceased. And they sowed their land, and that year they brought enough grain home and ate and were satisfied. Okay, I'm going to go skip down. And it came to pass in the 6th week in the 7th year thereof, that Abraham said to Terah his father, Father. And he said, Behold, here I am, son. And he said, What help and profit have we from those idols which thou dost worship? For there is no spirit in them, for they are dumb forms and a misleading of the heart. Worship them not. Worship the God of heaven, who causeth the rain and the dew to descend on the earth, and doth everything upon the earth, and hath created everything by his word, and all life is from before his face. Why do you worship these things that have no spirit in them? For they are the work of men's hands. And on your shoulders do you bear them, and ye have no help from them. But they are a great cause of shame to those who make them, and a misleading of the heart to those who worship them. Worship them not. And his father said unto him, I also know it, my son, but what shall I do with the people who have made me to serve before them? And if I tell them the truth, they will slay me, for their soul cleaveth to them to worship them, and I honor them. Keep silent, my son, lest they slay thee. And these words he spake to his 2 brothers. And they were angry with him, and he kept silent. And in the 14th Jubilee, in the 2nd week, in the 7th year thereof, Abraham took himself a wife, and her name was Sarah, or Sarai. Okay, just like in the Bible. The daughter of his father, and she became his wife. Abraham took him a wife, and her name was Sarah, the daughter of his father. Okay. And Haran, his brother, took to himself a wife in the 3rd year of the 3rd week, and she bare him a son on the 7th year of the week, and called his name Lot. And Nahor, his brother, took himself a wife, and in the 6th year of the life of Abram, that is, in the 4th week of the 4th year thereof, Abram arose by night and burned the house of the idols, and he burned all that was in the house, and no man knew it. So he went, he burned everything down, all those idols. And they arose in the night and sought to save their gods. That's pretty bad when you got to save your God. Okay. From the midst of the fire. And Haran hasted to save them, but the fire flamed over him, and he was burnt in the fire, and he died in Ur of the Chaldees, before Terah his father, and they buried him in Ur of the Chaldees. Okay. Alright, now, and it talks about how he talked to the Lord, and then how the Lord told him to get up and he would bless thee. So, anyway, this is just one example of an account. I'm just saying how it fills in some details on some things that you know, his father was into idolatry, and there was this dialogue going on. I also believe that the book of Jasher has a story in it too that's pretty unique as well. If I find that, I'm going to bring that up, because it tells just a really cool idol story. And I believe it was Abraham, and how he just knew God existed. You know, he just knew God in his heart as he was growing up as a child, and he knew not to do idolatry. And then some little deal he did with these idols where he just busted them all up, and if I remember this correctly off the top of my head, his father had a whole room where they were all set up, where they would worship all these idols. So he went in and busted everything down, and there was one big idol in the middle. And anyway, I think as the story goes, his father's like, "What happened? What happened to all my idols? Did you do this?" And then Abraham says, "Well, you believe that these things have power, don't you?" And his father's like, "Well, yes, they're our gods, you know." And Abraham says, "Well, you see that one in the middle?" And his dad's like, "Well, yeah." And he says, he goes, "It was him. One part of him fell off, and he got angry, and he destroyed all the rest of your idols." And so it's funny how they put these stories together, I'm saying, because they you know, I mean, I'm sure that story probably isn't true, but it's interesting how they add these little folklore in of some really, you know, kind of cute, interesting stories in these pseudepigrahs. And so, anyway, I was just showing you an example excerpt. I hope you weren't bored. I hope you learned something in this video. I hope that the resources that I gave you are good to where you can go, and if you find something of interest that I'm talking about, maybe you can go research it further. You know I can't do justice to every single thing that I'm talking about. I've read a lot of things, I've watched a lot of things, I've heard a lot of things, and I'm just trying to share them with you so that if you're interested, you can go further. Anyway, be blessed.